We're going to talk about the satin stitch next. I went ahead and made a couple of shapes here with my water-soluble pen. This one's Mark Be Gone. It erases with water, so you can draw any shape you want. And if you don't get your stitches exactly right, then when you wash it away, you won't be able to see them. If you use something more permanent, you'll be able to see them. So this shape is kind of long. You could do a satin stitch where you lay your stitches this way, but then they would end up being kind of long. So I'm going to do it going horizontally instead. And what I like to do is I like to kind of start in the middle to give myself a little bit of a guide. Make a stitch halfway through. And then I like to make a couple more stitches to divide out each section before I fill it in. That way I'll know, I'll have a little guide of what direction I want the stitches to go in and what, I guess, what width I want them to be. So I give myself a couple little guidelines. Along the shape. And then for this one, so one thing you do not want to do is come back up. So you see I went down on this side. You don't want to come back up on that same side, because when you do, you might come back through that same hole and undo that stitch, or your stitch likely will be too close to the stitch you just made and it could easily come undone. So go back to the other side, and you end up wrapping your floss around quite a bit. You do use more floss that way. So I go back in and I fill in the stitches. I try to get them as close as I can together without overlapping, and just kind of fill in the spaces between those guidelines that I made. So coming in on the left, going down on the right, and kind of continuing that. And as you see, it will start to fill in that shape. Get one more in here between those two. And then you just keep going down through your shape, and once I get down to this other half of the shape, I would give myself some guidelines here also. So as you can see, as I'm going back up here, I got a little bit off of my guideline here somehow, and this side is a little bit wider than this side. And that'll happen. A good way to fix that is you can come up in that same hole, if you can get there. Maybe. There we go. that same hole from your last stitch, and instead of going straight over to where that stitch originally went, then move that up just a little bit and sort of divide that space in half there. So then I want to go back and do one more stitch across the middle here. So they're not all perfectly straight, but there's little tricks like that that you can do to fill up the space when you get a little bit off. It's fine to use the same hole. And then also, so this line is water soluble, so this line will disappear. But you can see that my stitches aren't exactly on the line. So sometimes I'll go, depending on what I'm working on, sometimes I'll go and do a little outline stitch around it. Sometimes I'll leave it just like this. It kind of depends on your end goal. So I'm going to use the same kind of idea to do this heart. It's a little shorter, so I feel like I can do stitches going vertically. And a heart's kind of a common shape to fill in with a satin stitch. What I like to do is start at the point to the point where it goes in at the top for a heart. And then again, I'm going to give myself the guidelines. I do tend to end up not going too straight sometimes. Sometimes if I kind of want to see where that line should be, I'll hold the thread and then just sort of go back and put it in where it looks like it should be. Pulling up some threads from the back that I don't have trimmed. Sometimes that'll happen. I just pull them out of the way. And once I have some guidelines, then I'll just start filling in those spaces. Then I'll make more guidelines on the other side and fill that in. So I finished filling in my stitches. I'm just going to give them a little bit of a spray with water, and those blue lines will disappear. And I can see that with this sort of leaf shape, I probably would want to go around that and do a little bit of an outline stitch. And the heart actually looks all right as it is.